His lines are blown, the string is last turn back. The cloud, his scientists strong.